We're live now. Can you see us? Are you happy with the running order crap? That's kind of bits.
I am. I mean, there's kind of a big lump of me in the middle, and I think that's unavoidable, so that's fine. I've prepared for it, so
But it's a very lovely lump.
maybe. I think it's going to be mostly complaints,
Nick, can you
but
just
from
say
me.
something so the podders can check your level?
Yeah, I'm here. I have lemon squash, and I'm talking.
I've got
Lemon
Is that good?
squash.
sugar-free tango today.
Oh, nice. What flavor?
Mango, tango
Mango
mango.
tango.
I was interested in that, but it's like £2.20 for a 2 litre bottle in my local Sainsbury's, and I'm not paying that, so I'll wait until it goes on special.
Um,
Darien is a little high, says David. No, it's just coffee, I swear.
Look at the size of that mug. It's like a jacuzzi.
It's I'm not sure that's the first image I would reach for. It's a decent size, but it's wide. Right, I used to have a very tall mug, and this one's very wide, which means it's actually quite hard to it doesn't balance very comfortably in your hands. So it's more.
I thought Nick you'd like the mug.
I do like that one. I'm feeling really left out that I've just got a glass.
It's from New Slump,
Okay.
who do all those fabulous bits and T-shirts and stuff, taking the Mickey out of everybody. I know, Jeff, it is not your mug; it's my mug. I just give it to you in an ironic way when you're here.
Lisa's been writing for the Guardian. She's been doing stuff for their beauty reviews section, whereas Monica hasn't commissioned me to do anything, so I've had to slunk off and do the Telegraph instead, which is much less cool in my view. But
What, beauty reviews for the Telegraph?
no, I've been doing routers, amazingly enough, and internet security, and I've just been working on VPNs. So it's been a real stretch for me. I really.
Just managed to get a new high-speed record on Wi-Fi 7,
You
Darian.
have.
Yeah,
What's that?
3.7 gigabits a second of user data.
That is good. Yes, I've never seen anything close to that. But I do.
That was on Wi-Fi 7 MLO mode, but not actually. I can't find anything that bonds channel 5 and channel 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz together.
I think one of the routers I've been to. I
No, no,
think
no.
maybe the
They
TP
they
Link one
they
does.
claim that
But
all the clients are basically doing it as failover between two radios. So it's usually 2.4 and 5 or 2.4 and 6, depending upon how close you are to the router.
I've definitely got 5 and 6 together. But I haven't found them. I haven't found the combination to actually be faster
Then it's not
than
bonding.
5
It,
on its own.
yeah.
Well, it's showing as bonding in both the firmware and
On
the
what client?
this is an Intel BE200 card in Windows 11. If you go into the Intel
Because if you're not
diagnostics,
getting
it
over
says,
4 gigabits a second of user data, it's not parallelizing.
well, it's not parallelizing effectively, but it does claim to be. I shouldn't be clipping. Nothing's. Sorry, Jeff is. Clipping is as a would-be audio engineer. That's a word that triggers me. Okay, I've pulled myself down a little bit.
Okay.
And now I should keep talking so you can find out if it actually makes any difference. I really ought to keep some screen wipes in here. I think my camera might be a bit
Right.
might be a bit smudged. Thanks, guys, on Discord for validating my audio settings.
Burp. Uh, emails. What's happening in email land? Um,
How can you find the potential internet speed of a property? Well, it depends if you want. I mean, you can check whether it's got OpenReach fiber or Virgin fiber, and if so, its internet speed is almost unlimited. And if it hasn't, then gosh, well, in my case, I just got Virgin to come and dig up the road, and it only took about 3 months to get a decent broadband connection after we moved in. And of course, when our contract expires, they're going to try and double the price. So I'm having to plan ahead to get someone else probably to come and lay some fibre as well, so I can credibly leave them and then come back again, or at least credibly threaten to leave them. So that's all fun. Paul Riley has suggested a website which might be might be helpful too. There is maybe it is that one where it shows you all the different fibre um, uh, layouts kind of overlaid on a map. Well, certainly of my area, I presume of all the UK, which is quite interesting. But if fibre runs close to your house, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to be willing or able to extend it into your house, as I discovered. It's all to do with what infrastructure they would have to move and what their budget is for connecting you.
I live in a through road, and they did that end and not this bit until this year. So they were all nice and fast. They were all nice and fast. And as you know, Darren, every time I was downloading the software
Yes.
bundle to write the spread, it would take about a day and a half.
And they wouldn't come and extend it.
Oh, they've done it now. I think.
But I mean, so you couldn't call them up and say, "Listen, I want to join you, but you're not connected to my house."
I think they had to wait till there was critical mass. When enough of us wanted it, we've got it. But like you, when it comes to the end of my initial contract, it's going to be very expensive.
Fun.
Yeah, I had fibre to the premises, which was from OpenReach, which was very expensive. But GigaClear came in to the village, and so I'm on a nice 1 gig symmetrical fibre for whatever it is, 60 quid a month, 50 quid a month. With the Starlink in as hot backup.
As I understand it, the trouble with Virgin Media is that only they use that network, so there's no, there's no alternative. Whereas if you can get OpenReach fiber, then you can play the different providers off each other over the same link. What's that Paul Riley has shared? Yes, that looks like the thing. And I guess OpenReach will have to dig another channel directly next to the one that Virgin dug, so I'll have two enormous bits of tarmac, ugly, crossing the road directly outside my house, but such is life. 25 seconds. Yes, let's all do our vocal warm-ups.
Do a bit of Pavarotti.
Oh, my glasses are mucky.
Oh, we should do a hot hardware on the Zeiss lens glasses cleaners sachets. They're very good.
1 o'clock.
You ready to go?
Yep.
What the hell am I supposed to say? Right, okay. Oh God, why did that just shut down? Okay, sorry, machine just had a thing. Right, okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It's Thursday the 21st of August 2025 and this is episode 754. With me today I have Mr. Nick.
Hello, John.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And I know that on radio you're not... Are we counting this as radio? You're not supposed to ask back, so don't think I'm rude. I'll just say I'm well.
That sounds very, very lovely then. And we also have Dr. Darian. How are you today?
Hello there. I'm all right, thank you. It's been super busy. We've just been finishing off the next issue of PC Pro. And as I think I've mentioned, I'm also working on a separate project, a beginner's guide to ChatGPT. And as I think I complained last week, they keep on changing it while I'm trying to write about it. So this is causing much fun and late nights, but I'm generally bearing up. All right, thank you.
So it's kind of this week's version of ChatGPT. They've still got multiple versions running at the same time, haven't they?
Well, they've gone back to having multiple versions running at the same time. I think we did talk about this last week, so I won't go over it too much. But yes, it's initially they took away everything except the latest, whizziest version, and that caused great annoyance. And now we have even more versions than we ever had before, I think, and they keep moving around how you access them. It's all brilliant stuff.
Well, if you spent hundreds of millions or whatever it is training a model, I suppose you may as well try and keep it running, provided you've got the compute stack to keep these things running in memory.
Yeah, I don't know what. It's probably an understatement to say I don't know exactly what OpenAI's, short-term tactics are, or we all know their long-term idea is they'll create AGI and that's going to run the world for us. But in terms of like their month-to-month or year-to-year intentions and goals, it all seems a little bit random and arbitrary to me.
Yeah, and everyone's sort of moving every week, so it's all terribly nebulous. Anyway, let's crack on. We've got a lot to cover today. So it starts off with me. You'll remember a couple of months ago there was quite a spat between Apple and the UK government over the calls by the UK government to allow the UK government services to have basically a backdoor access into Apple's services. And therefore all the user data that's being held by Apple in the cloud for each user through its iCloud services, so emails and messaging and file sharing and so forth. And the justification that was given at the time would appear to have been this is encrypted, we can't get to see it, therefore we need to have access. Which was, as you can imagine, a pretty contentious claim, and an awful lot of feathers got extremely ruffled. And it's also not helped by the fact that, of course, the American government, in the form of Mr. Trump and his cohorts, got very upset very quickly, because this was seen to be essentially an attack on an American sovereign state loveliness, and this simply wasn't going to happen. And the justification they gave was that this could potentially allow the British government access into American users' data. So what also added an extra frisson to this is, as I understand it, this instruction to Apple from the UK government was done under a secrecy order, and therefore they weren't really basically allowed to talk about it. But Apple came out and publicly said, we do not fit backdoors into our services for anybody under any circumstances. We haven't in the past, and we're certainly not going to start now. And basically we got into a stalemate on this between the two organisations. Well, it appears to have resolved itself, and it's resolved itself by the elephant in the room being the White House, basically telling the UK government in its various parts that no way was this going to happen, and they should better stop thinking about it right now, please. So a few days ago, the US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, posted onto Twitter, and her quote, well, the quote was, over the past few months I've been working closely with our partners in the UK, partners is such a good word, isn't it, alongside POTUS and VP, to ensure Americans' private data remains private and our constitutional rights and civil liberties are protected. As a result, the UK has agreed to drop its mandate for Apple to provide a backdoor that would have enabled access to the protected encrypted data of American citizens and encroached on our civil liberties, unquote. So basically the UK government has effectively said that they are not going to do this now because, well, it wasn't a battle worth fighting, because clearly the American government weren't going to back down on this, and so it just turned into a who blinked first, and it would appear to have been the UK government. At the time, you'll remember that Apple disabled the facilities to hard encrypt everything on your set of Apple devices, all of your data. And that's a hard encryption thing that was always optional. It was never turned on by default. But you could turn it on if you wanted to. And when you did try to turn it on, it warned you very, very clearly that Apple did not hold any keys to this. And if you screwed it up, you were entirely on your own. So it was the kind of encryption thing that required care and thought. But they took away that facility because that was a part of what the UK government was complaining about at the time. Darian, what's your take on this?
It's kind of hard to know the truth because, of course, the notice that it was leaked, it was publicised that the UK authorities initially served on Apple was never made public. So we don't know the specifics of what really they were asking for. And I was just trying to find out whether we know when it was issued, because although the story came to light in December, I don't know whether there's a chance it might even have dated back to the previous government. And it's just because it's, you say, I mean, it does look like the UK has backed down. It looks like the UK has blinked first, as it were. But all of the complete secrecy surrounding this just makes it a little bit hard to really read. And I was wondering, because there was a slightly suggestive quote in, who was it the BBC was talking to? Somebody about this, who said, in government, who said, of course, we have ongoing, I think it's partnerships and programs with the US authorities to pursue investigations. So it might be that although this very specific request has been withdrawn, it could have been in response to some, behind the scenes dealing where the US may have said, if you bring us, specific requirements, we can help you get those without blowing the back doors off, so to speak. We just don't know. It was never a good look, really, in the first place, though, to issue what appeared to be such a blanket request. It never really made much sense, and it wasn't clear whether the UK government had asked this of anybody else. I think WhatsApp is the only company which made any statement either way. They said they hadn't been asked to break their encryption. But yeah, the whole thing's a bit mysterious, and it's ended with such a kind of a almost a whimper. Not a statement from Apple, as far as I can see, not a statement from the UK government, just an almost by-the-by announcement from Tulsi Gabbard. So thus ends, for me, a rather puzzling, but ultimately probably not very consequential chapter.
And of course, the super conspiracy theorists out there will maintain that, well, of course, the NSA has already got access anyway, so maybe they just didn't want other governments to have access to the toys that they had. I mean, that's a huge conspiracy theory. I think we have to take it on face value when Apple stated that there were no backdoors and that they were not going to put them in. That is the truth, given that this is, statements by director levels in a publicly traded company in America.
Yeah, and there's no evidence to suggest otherwise, is there?
Absolutely zero evidence whatsoever. I'm just saying the conspiracy theorists would like to maintain that it's there. I would also like to point out, of course, that if you are a director of an American publicly traded company, then Wall Street really will come after you if you've been proven to be lying. Nick, do you have a take on this?
Just that I'm not entirely surprised that this was the outcome. This seems to have been a very ambitious request in the first place, and I think we're probably going to see more and more of them as time goes on. It's a bit of a whack-a-mole, isn't it, where new technologies are going to come out and governments are going to realize that stops their ability to chase the people they're after or find the people they're looking for. And they're going to make these requests, and I think each one's going to have to be taken on its merit. And, is it proportional, I think, is the question that's going to have to be asked. And I think putting in a request for a specific piece of information about a specific person is one thing, but asking for a backdoor so that you can wander in uninvited at any point that you want to search for some information that hasn't been specified up front maybe is something entirely different.
Yeah, but this has always been the case with information, isn't it? It's far nicer to just go off and grab everything and then sort through it in your own way, because who knows what else you might discover by doing that. You may find correlations and connections in play that wouldn't have been obvious if you only asked for the specific information about a specific person, for example. So of course I fully understand why the security services and other government level players in this space would like to hoover up everything they possibly can get access to, because again, if there's a file that's shared in someone's file space, which is, appalling video of child molestation or something, if you can just go and search across the entire storage estate for other instances of that file, who knows who else you're going to shake out at the same time. So yeah, I mean, as I said, I agree with both of you. I think it's ended with a whimper. And the only reason that we know that it's kind of come to an end is because Tulsi has posted this. Otherwise, we simply wouldn't have known. Which is kind of a bit of an undesirable outcome for something like this, I have to say. I think we should have a little bit more openness about what the government is trying to do. There's
think,
sorry.
John, I think your example is a very good one, and a very valid one as well. But shouldn't that search be performed by the service provider? I think, if we're talking about Apple in this instance, but whoever it is we're talking about, if that data is on their servers, surely they're the ones that are in the better position to be finding replicated versions of that data far more quickly than a government that might have to hoover up the data and retrospectively start looking for
Absolutely,
something
but
within that haystack.
there's two problems with this. One of which is if you have got the full end-to-end encryption, the advanced data protection capabilities in play, that it wouldn't be possible for Apple to decrypt it anyway. And now you could say, of course, that there are plenty of low-hanging fruits of nasty people who aren't terribly tech savvy and therefore wouldn't have turned on this capability in the first place. So maybe you would have struck lucky. The other thing to remember here, of course, is it was only a couple of years ago that Apple was trying to bring in exactly this kind of fingerprinting facility and back down from it, because despite the cleverness of what they were trying to put together, which was really quite an impressive piece of technology, they weren't happy that it was actually going to work properly. Darian?
Well, I think I see exactly where Nick is coming from in terms of it does seem like a ridiculous sort of replication or overcomplication to get an external agency to come in and try to, to snarf up all of Apple's data and try to do operations on it when the company probably has all the bits in place already. But I'm still, I think, kind of idealistic enough to say I wouldn't want to see that done internally by any company such as Apple, because there are so many conflicting interests affecting it, including the disruption of its business, reputational risk, and so on. It's got all sorts of motivations and not that many accountabilities. In a way that I think, if I realize it's not ideal to have the Stasi march in and say we've had a tip off that there might be a dodgy picture on one of these one of these servers hosting terabytes, petabytes of data, so we're going to freeze them, destroy your business, take all the data away. We don't care, it doesn't affect us at all. I don't want to go that far, but I do kind of I'm still sort of naive enough to think that I do want the government, I do want electable, accountable agencies dealing with this stuff, just because we're at this point, we've all seen with the best will in the world what the pressures are on tech companies, unforced by regulators and the like.
And let's not forget, of course, that government security agencies on both sides of the pond have been, have a history apparently of being involved in coming up with tools to break into devices, mobile devices, and so forth. To be able to go and target specific people, or buying in capabilities like this from third-party agencies, in the past notably out of Israel, to target someone and then get into their device and then see what's on there. So I also wonder whether there was a desire to force this access at the politician level, but the security services people basically said that we don't want anything to do with this because it's a really bad idea and it's a bad look and no good will come out of it. And by the way, we've got all the tools we need anyway, thank you very much. So I don't know, we will never know, and maybe the story will get told in 20-30 years time, but it's not being told for the moment. Following on from this, we have been talking over the last months about the Online Safety Act and the impact it's been having on requiring people to authenticate that they're over 18 by various methods, face analysis, handing over credit card details or driving license and so forth. We've talked about these over the past weeks. The problem, of course, is that this has apparently caused quite a flood of people wanting to install VPN services, not their own client-to-server VPN, but a client on their machine going out to a commercial VPN endpoint service and using that to basically geolocate themselves somewhere else on the planet and therefore get to these services pretending to be within the United States or somewhere else rather than the UK. And I've read reports of various VPN companies claiming massive spikes in the download and take-up of their services. It's It's interesting that Dame Rachel de Souza, who is is England's children's commissioner, apparently told BBC Newsnight on Monday this week that VPNs are, quote, absolutely a loophole that needs closing, unquote, and made the case for saying that VPN services like this should have age checks applied to them in the same way that we, of course, have age checks now applied to websites and social media services and so forth. What's your take on that, Nick?
Most of these are not hosted, or a lot of the ones that we use are not hosted within the reach of the UK law. So the only way, surely, to achieve that is to block them, isn't it?
Well, do we want to end up with a sort of a UK firewall, you know?
Well, that's the
Um,
question.
well, I mean, isn't that the kind of question that should be held at a sort of open political discussion and so forth? Uh,
Wasn't there a suggestion that ISPs might block them at that level unless the account holder validates their? I suppose I was going to say that makes sense, but then how do you know it's not the account holder's 16-year-old kid who's actually accessing it? Yes, implementation is does raise some questions.
I mean, this sort of turns into a huge, great game of whack-a-mole, doesn't it? If you want to have a site that's available in the UK and takes money from the UK, then you have to implement these capabilities, which has gone down very badly, again, with our friends and colleagues in America. It's a pity we don't have one of our two resident house lawyers online to cover off the legal angle of this. Um, but it would appear that VPN tunneling somewhere else in the world with a commercial service would appear to get you around some of these things. Okay, let's block that. Now, what happens if you start doing this over Tor, or you're doing this over, a yet another set of platforms or capabilities or whatever that will spring up?
I
And
think it's
I
worth
guess
pointing out.
the argument here, I guess, sorry, Darian, is that it's not about stopping everything. It's about stopping the majority of it and making it sufficiently difficult that you have done something to significantly reduce the perceived problem. Sorry, Darian.
I think it's worth pointing out that nobody in any position of credibility or authority is actually suggesting banning or blocking VPNs outright. I've seen some quite hysterical stuff on social media since the OSA came into came into force, but it is quite conspicuous that everybody thus far has stopped short of recommending that. Apart from, I think there's one or two backbenchers who said it ought to be on the table or something something as cautious as that. No one else is ready to make that jump. So I think the next question, I mean, because I thought, obviously implementation, as I say, is a challenge, but I thought when I heard this, maybe it's not the worst, kind of most draconian idea ever, because many of the legitimate reasons for using a VPN apply to very few. I mean, certainly, I don't think anyone under the age of 16 is likely to need to conceal, their financial data, or they're not going to be likely to be exchanging financial data over over an open internet connection kind of thing. I think that you can, of course, draw up special cases, but in general, the imposition would be relatively small if you restrict its access for non-adults, basically people not who don't have adult lives, aren't doing adult things online. Now, obviously, that there are questions of whether certain rights are inalienable, whether it's not acceptable for a single person to have to be blocked off from doing a particular thing. But I think we've always agreed from the start that this is going to be a messy area, and there is no perfect solution. And I thought the lady, I'm afraid I've lost her name. It's somebody D'Souza, isn't it? I thought she was being quite reasonable, actually, in saying that there is an obvious loophole right here that needs to be addressed, because there is an obvious loophole right here.
I think it's reasonable. I mean, all of that's very reasonable, Darian. That and you could certainly make the case. What use is there for a private individual in the UK requiring a VPN tunnel to somewhere else? Your banking is done through a web browser, through an app, and it's encrypted, TLS encrypted end to end. The claims that some VPN companies like to that if you're away from your home network and you're not using a VPN tunnel, then all sorts of nasty things will happen to you. Is really scaremongering of the worst sort. Um, however, however, I suspect that a great deal of VPN use by, shall we call them, domestic users up till now, has been to get around geo-locking on streaming media, for example, access to your to your Netflix or your BBC Sounds or whatever it may be, especially if you've gone abroad or you're away or whatever. Um, the problem I see here is that you are now regulating another area in terms of requiring proof that you have an adult requirement for this. And I don't, by that I mean pornographic, I mean someone who's over the age of 18 has a requirement to have access to this technology. And I have deep worries, as we've talked about in previous weeks, over the potential implementation and trustworthiness in terms of ongoing and immediate trustworthiness of some of the solutions that may be in play here. And so, applying this out to yet another area of technology has its own difficulties. Of course, those of us, I run VPNs all the time, and businesses run VPNs all the time, but you generally are hosting both ends of the connection here. What's the next step going to be? Is it going to be you have to have a licensed, or you have to become registered to be able to be allowed to have a VPN? And then, of course, the nerds out there, of which, of course, there are quite a few of our friends on the PC Pro channel on Discord, will say, well, let's just come up with a new way of doing this. Let's make it even more difficult to spot and filter, because if you're going to make it illegal, you're going to need to have someone to turn off the tap, and that, as you said, Darian, probably is going to land with the ISPs. And is the ISPs going to want to have to do some sort of packet filtering if everything's running over port 80 or port 440, whatever? So I don't know. It's the whole thing fills me with worry about poor implementation and poor management. Anyway, I think obviously this is going to roll and roll and roll. I think you're probably right, Darian, that no one terribly serious is claiming that this should be implemented. Although I agree with you about Dame Rachel D'Souza making a perfectly valid point that VPNs are a loophole that needs closing. The question is how you do that and in what way. But she has a valid point, much though the nerds out there in us who grew up in the earliest days of the internet and who believed in all of this la free speech, free global communication and stuff, it was our grand naivety, and here we are. Anyway, it's time to move on. And it's with you next, Darian, for quite a chunky, juicy bit of stuff, because Google has been up to stuff this week, haven't they? What they've been up to?
Well, you say chunky and juicy. That was kind of my hope, but I'm not really sure it is all that substantial, to be honest. Let me explain. The by now annual Made by Google event was last night. It was hosted, I'm not sure where they came from, probably the west coast of the US, I would guess, but it was in a live studio with Jimmy Fallon talking to various Google luminaries, including Rick Berman, to talk about principally their new range of Pixel phones, the Pixel 10, Pixel 10 Pro, Pixel 10 Pro XL, Pixel 10 Pro Fold, I think it's called. Basically, it is, if unless you've been asleep for the past several years, you will not be at all surprised to hear about the lineup of the new phones. It's identical in terms of the model variants to last year's Pixel 9 series, which was in turn identical to the Pixel 8 series, except that the Fold was introduced last year, which was in turn identical to the Pixel 7 series. It's very, very iterative. There weren't high hopes that there would be any amazing new technologies on display, because so much of what was going to be new in the phones had already leaked, and then was, I don't know whether it was in response to the leaks or to try to manage the news. So much of it was then officially revealed by Google ahead of the event. So no great surprises. And there wasn't anything really much to be surprised about, to be honest with you. The biggest change, probably to the lineup, is that the standard entry-level Pixel phone, your 799 handset, now gets a 5x zoom, which was previously reserved for the Pro models. That's quite exciting, actually, because I do find that is a standout feature. But to compensate for that, they've shrunk down the sensor in the main camera, which makes me kind of rather dubious about it. It's like, unless I'm doing extreme long reach, are the vast majority of my pictures actually going to look worse with the Pixel 10? Other stuff which applies to the whole range, they've got the Tensor G5 chip, same one in all of the phones. As usual, it's not as fast as the best that Qualcomm or Apple have to offer, but it's fast enough, and it's got various custom bits to enhance its AI and image processing. A slightly fun, perhaps, addition is what they're calling Pixel Snap, which is basically a complete rip-off of Apple's circular magnets on the back of their phones. So now you can snap on a circular Qi charger, and there's now support for Qi2 at up to 25 watts on the big one. Or you can snap on a magnetic stand, which is quite cute, I guess. And the Pixel Fold, the most interesting thing about that, arguably actually the most interesting thing about the whole event, is that the new Pixel Fold is IP68 rated, which means that for the first time ever, there's a folding phone on the market which has a degree of certification against dust ingress, because all of these phones with their fold-out screens, previously no one's been able to, or no one's been willing to make it so there's no danger of bits of grit, dust, pocket fluff, etc., working their way under the seam where the screen folds, and this could be catastrophic. So it's been a real big concern for anyone looking to buy a folding phone. These things cost £1,800, so you really want some kind of assurance it's not going to just self-destruct the moment you put it in your pocket. So that is a potentially a big step forward. Other than that, though, I was watching this closely because my Pixel 7 Pro, which I've had obviously for 3 years, was the battery and the screen were both starting to give out. Otherwise, it does absolutely everything I could ask for, and then some. Although it's supposedly, it was supposedly one of the slowest flagship phones of its generation, but I never had the slightest problem doing anything with it, including, the latest versions of whatever games and services I'm running. So I think that's a big red herring. But yes, I was about ready to upgrade just in the natural course of things. So I was watching this, and I was honestly quite disappointed that in 3 years there's really nothing very significant changed. What is new, of course, is the software. It's not clear yet how many of these features will be reverse engineered back onto previous Pixel phones, but some of the headline features in the Pixel 10 series are a thing called Magic Q, which I don't know if it goes on the phone number that you're calling or listens in on your call, but one way or another it brings up relevant information while you're speaking to someone. It's a cute idea. I see a small problem in that when I'm speaking to someone, I have my phone held against my face, so I can't really see it. I guess this is designed for people who either use earbuds, which is increasingly annoying me, or even worse, just kind of walk around with their phone like this, like apprentice candidates. But it's it's a freebie effectively, so can't complain about that. Camera Coach is a thing that can look at the scene you're framing and very quickly suggest ways you might make it look nicer. I'm all for that. Real-time translation, they demonstrated on the live stream last night, where you can call up somebody, and if the two of you are speaking different languages, you can speak, and then it will immediately translate what you said into the target language. And the impressive thing is it actually captures your voice and your tone and your inflections. So you can say, I found that surprising. And it will say, je la trouve étonnant, which is pretty remarkable stuff. And it worked very well in the demo. I don't know how well it might work in real life. Maybe we'll find out. These are all things, though, that, how often do you really initiate a phone call with someone who doesn't speak your language? I don't initiate phone calls more than once a month, even to people who do speak English. So who knows? The one I keep on saying maybe this is the most interesting, most significant thing. This is the last of the software features, I promise, and it is definitely going to cause some discussion. There's a new feature on the Pixel 10 Pro models called ProRes Zoom. Now, the previous ones had up to 20 times digital zoom on top of the 5 times optical zoom. And this worked pretty well. It actually did a surprisingly good job of presumably using AI type stuff to clean up the image and make it look fairly smooth. Obviously, like there was detail that just wasn't there, and you lost kind of that fine crispness. But in general, the pictures are quite usable, quite shareable. ProRes Zoom takes this to another level using generative AI. The features which are not there, it will interpolate for you. It will create crisp, sharp looking, detailed images at extreme zooms. And they're talking about, I think when they share these pictures, they don't say shot on pixel, they say created on pixel or words to that effect, because I think we are really moving into the realm now where photography becomes kind of a continuum between these are the exact photons that hit the sensor, and this is a complete scene generated just inspired by the very tiny amount of information that we could pick up at this extreme distance. And just to put that into figures for you, the ProRes zoom on the Google Pixel 10 Pro goes up to 100 times magnification. So you can imagine how much work the generative engine is doing versus how much detail is actually captured. I'm honestly really looking forward to trying it out. I know some people will hate this, but I'm reserving judgment because, to be honest, I've always been one to touch up my pictures after the fact anyway, because I kind of feel like what you're sharing is a representation. It's not the reality anyway. So unless you're selling yourself as, you know, a particular what's like realpolitik but for photography, you know, unless you're really selling yourself as a naturalistic documentarian artist, I don't see any shame in it myself. And you don't have to use the feature if you don't want to, but it's interesting that it's there. I have, in case I didn't mention, I have actually ordered the 10 Pro. That should be arriving maybe next week. I'm off next week, so it'll certainly be with us by the time by the podcast after that, which will be the first one of September, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you all about it then.
Isn't is it called Qi, QI? Is it
Oh,
pronounced
probably,
Qi?
yeah.
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 Isn't Qi 2 basically MagSafe that Apple effectively open sourced? They put it out into the public domain for everybody to be able to use the MagSafe standard, and I think that has been rolled into Qi 2 standard. That's from the depths of my memory of about a year or two back. Was
They're,
there
they're definitely compatible. I don't know what the story is about licensing.
I think there was some kind of open license done there to ensure that any magnetic mounting will be usable by anything. But obviously, the limitation there will be how much charging power can you put through it. Because
Yep.
there's quite, as I covered off in my column some months ago, there's an awful lot of magnetic mounting, MagSafe mounts, for example, for use in car. That's 7.5 watts only, sometimes 15 watts, which is a long way short of the sort of 25 watts that you can do on a current big Apple phone, and I
Yep.
believe even higher than that with some of the latest Samsungs and so forth.
I think Qi 2 goes up to 25 watts maximum, and only the Pixel 10 Pro XL supports that. The others are capped at 15 watts, which is a bit annoying, but it doesn't, it doesn't bother me because, because at the time I'm using a wireless charger. It kind of I'm not in a rush. If I were in a rush, I'd just plug the damn thing in and get 65 watts rather than messing around with the lower wireless ratings.
And of course, let's be quite sensible about this. You start putting 65 watts into a phone, it's going to get very hot very quickly, and you're only going to get that charging level if the battery's pretty empty. You're certainly not going to be getting that kind of charge rates when it's closer to full.
Sorry, before I get corrected, unless it's already happened, just to be clear, the Pixel 10 Pro only goes up to 39 watt maximum charging speed. So 65 watt is reserved for your One Pluses and your, I think, Xiaomi or something. But it is possible with
Yeah, I mean,
with the right hardware.
and the point about your sort of what I call computational photography, that the problem there is, of course, yes, it's one thing to sort of take multiple shots and create an HDR image. So it's another thing to take a bunch of shots and use it to do vibration removal, motion movement removals to clean things up. it starts to get a little bit more murky when you're starting to sort of AI generate contents of your photo. And as Jeff Campbell pointed out on Discord, didn't Samsung get into some problems with shots of the moon, outdoor shots taken at night, where basically you put a different picture of the moon in place? Do you remember that?
I
it was
do. I thought it was
couple of years ago.
brilliantly inventive of
Oh,
Samsung to make their cameras
fabulously
look.
clever, but completely fake.
Well,
Nick, any thoughts on these Google announcements for you?
ProRes sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Isn't that an Apple thing? That's the format that they use for video. I think the other thing is, though, a lot of these headlines are great. I love hearing about these massive resolutions, but I wonder how often we're going to use them, particularly that 100 times zoom. On my camera, it turns on and it takes it in 1 times zoom 95% of the time, and the other 5% of the time I actually use 0.5% zoom because I want to, well, I think it's zero point 0.6. I want to get a wider picture rather than a narrow picture, given that there's a little bit of distortion around the edges. But I did buy my phone because it had a 3 times optical zoom. And at the time I thought I was going to use it. That was the big selling point for me. I bought cameras in the past that have been non-interchangeable lens cameras, purely because the lens goes in and out such a long way that, as far as I'm concerned, I've got 3 cameras in a compact body. I only ever use them on the one setting. And I think, I'm not the only one. Surely there must be a lot of people like me who look at these headlines, buy something for the headline, and then realize that the headline just wasn't aimed at, well, it was aimed at me, obviously, because I spent the money on it. But, I'm not the person that's ever going to benefit from that headline. I love the sound of all these products. I think I probably personally wouldn't get the most out of them.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my Samsung Fold 7, and it allows me to go up to 30 times zoom.
Have you
And
tried it?
yeah, it's not terribly good. I mean, it's kind of useful if you really, really needed to have it, and it's definitely something you would want to stabilize by resting against something to have any hope of getting a really nice photo out of it, or a usable photo out of it without too much blur and an awful lot of noise. Well, so that's where we're going to then. Do you think Google? Sorry, do you think, Darren? This is kind of like an open-ended question. Do we think that the AI services are sufficiently good to tempt people to move from the Samsung camp on the Android side, or the Apple camp, the iOS side on the Apple side, or are they just kind of like arm-waving features for a bit player in the market?
I think most of the AI features on most phones are kind of candy. I think they're mostly kind of showing off what we can do rather than things that people will really make use of. I know there are a couple of features. I think Samsung's got sort of voice transcription and note taking and editing things, which some people find useful. Like Google, obviously, they're invested more in the camera side of stuff at the moment than Samsung is. But really, I think it takes a particular killer feature, and at the moment AI is more of a froth of ideas. But for me, I think the ProRes zoom is potentially that killer feature. I'm really excited about trying it out. It works with video as well as stills, so I'm kind of like I say, it's got me excited in a way that almost nothing else about this has. I think at this point, Google was marketing quite heavily ahead of the event. They were saying, we've got all the working AI stuff that Apple still hasn't delivered. But I don't think anybody at this stage who is using Android is going to switch to Apple or vice versa, short of some cataclysmic change in their own platform, because it's not an easy transition. The user experiences are quite different. The software libraries are completely separate. So whatever you've built up on your on your iPhone or on your Pixel, you're basically starting again from scratch if you hop over that divide. And people do get quite personally attached to it's not just about what can it do for me. It's part of their identity. I mean, Apple is partly well, to blame is maybe the wrong word. They very intentionally made themselves a lifestyle, and Android, I think, is kind of can be defined by the rejection of that lifestyle almost for many people. Of course, there are some who hop back and forth, but I think the competition really is not between Android and Apple. It is between Google and Samsung, and I don't think either of them is really, I mean, I want to say that I was going to say that Android is really killing it. I think that's unfair, actually, because I think they both have equal claim to be putting out the best phones on the market right now. But if you like Samsung, then nothing here, I think, is going to make you go, "Ooh, maybe I should go Pixel."
Okay, well, I think we need to move on because oh no, Darren has still got one more point.
I did. I just wanted to add before we move on. I'll just do one sentence on each thing. Pixel Watch 4. It was also announced with improved battery life and bigger, brighter display. But the improved battery life is up to 40 hours per charge, which may sound good if you're a Pixel Watch owner. But those who were listening to the podcast a couple of weeks ago will know I've got my Redmi watch, which lasted for 21. No, sorry, that's not true. 15 days before a recharge. So I'm definitely not going back to the Pixel Watch anytime soon. Also, Gemini is coming to your interactive assistants. The Google Home platform completely died a death. I don't know anybody who's got like a Google Home Pod or what. Home Pod is Apple, but you know what I mean. The Google Home device or the Google Mini. I'm not even sure they're still selling them. They probably are. But Gemini is coming to your home, and it might, just might, do all the things that Alexa Plus is supposed to do. Only we don't have Alexa Plus in the UK, and so far Google hasn't been talking about monetizing Gemini in that same way. You don't necessarily have to worry about whether they're going to load it with ads or charge a subscription. It's also coming to your car via Android Auto, which I am a lot more interested in because there's so much clever stuff going on in the AI world. You know, I've been, as I say, working with ChatGPT. It's blown me away with its intelligence, its ability to understand what I want, to infer things, to know about the world around me. Then I get in the car and I try to speak to Android Auto, and it's as dumb as you could possibly imagine. It feels like the stupidest AI they could possibly make. So if that's going to be replaced by the proper Gemini experience, then that's a big quality of life improvement. Again, for free, I think.
Okie dokie, let's roll on. Nick, there's things been happening at Intel.
Yes, this is financial news technically. As we know, COVID made everyone think about supply lines. There was various supply line problems where chips weren't being shipped from the Far East because obviously nothing was being shipped around the world, and we were all worried more about face masks than we were about chips. And that made those in power realize that if there was a disagreement on that side of the planet, say China decided it was quite interested in Taiwan, there might be problems with chip supply. And also, certain companies that were manufacturing those kinds of things in the Western Hemisphere were having financial problems. So the US government instituted what it called the Chips and Science Act, which set aside $52 billion in subsidies and tax credits, some of which went to Intel with the idea of building new factories. I think Ohio was one of the places targeted for that. With the new administration, they are looking in return for that money to take an investment or a chunk of stock in Intel. There's talk of it being up to 10%, which would make the US government one of Intel's largest shareholders. Now, this isn't unheard of. Obviously, in 2008, when we had the big crash, the US government took a 60% stake in General Motors. So this is something we've seen before. And it comes at about the same time that SoftBank has announced that it's investing $2 billion in Intel, which would buy it around 2% stake, which is quite interesting because SoftBank was one of several parties, including OpenAI and Oracle, to announce the Stargate AI infrastructure plan at the White House at the beginning of Trump's second term. But Intel isn't currently really a leader in AI chips. A lot of that work obviously is going to NVIDIA. But if you look at the other things that SoftBank has been investing in lately, it obviously bought ARM for about 32 billion, and it's now reckoned to be worth about 5 times that. And announced in March it was going to be spending 6.5 billion acquiring another chip designer called Ampere Computing, which was founded by Renee James, who was previously general manager of Intel's Software and Services Group. So I think what we're seeing is a larger story around maybe consolidation. There's a lot of investment going on in a lot of similar companies by companies that have an investment or an interest in this area of technology. And I've obviously completely rambled that story because I realized we were so late into it, but there we are.
Sounds good. So things.
Does it really?
Well,
the way I told it.
No, I mean it's an interesting story because you can almost sort of put this into as a marker on the history of the downfall of Intel when you get these kind of players, including the American government, stepping in to try and wrestle some sort of ownership of it. Darren, you've got any thoughts on this?
No, only that it's interesting that SoftBank now have stakes in both ARM and Intel. So I wonder, they're playing both sides. But I mean, it's good news for Intel that people are seeing them as worth investing in, because we've had a string of kind of equivocal would be a generous way of putting it, headlines about them recently. I'm kind of just fascinated by the soap opera. Who knows what's going to happen next?
Well, Darian, something that you mentioned when we were talking about Intel a few weeks ago was the fab business that they're setting up, developing or building chips for other people. When you actually look at what's going on with SoftBank in particular, if it's investing in Intel, it's interested in building AI infrastructure. It owns ARM, and it's also invested in a designer of chips who has, from what I've read around, designed a chip based on ARM. Does that all play into, do you think, having this capacity to
Well,
fabricate chips for
I
other
don't know,
people?
because in Intel's latest, I mean, we were talking about Intel because their fabs were not giving the yield they wanted, because they were struggling to produce reliable chips. It would make more sense to me if you said that SoftBank are only interested in IP and they're looking at Intel because the chip design is good, and that's and forget about the like with ARM, forget about the fab side of things. That can always be outsourced. But I just don't know what who knows what they're thinking.
Anyway, it's time for nibs, and we've got a little collection of tasty nibs here. I'll start off with Volkswagen, who has announced apparently that if you have an eligible car from its ID3 range, this is part of its electric car range, you can pay money in the form of a subscription or a monthly subscription or an annual fee or an outright purchase to have an optional power upgrade. So this will unlock more horsepowers from your ID3 and make it go quicker. I haven't managed to find out exactly how much of a poke increase you get, but apparently Volkswagen is saying it'll either be £16.50 a month or £165 a year, or £649 for a lifetime subscription, and that is apparently defined by life of the car, not ownership of the owning driver. Um, on the one hand, of course, this kind of sounds a little bit ludicrous. Why would you pay extra for a power upgrade? But manufacturers have been doing this for years. BMW and Audi on their M series cars have had basically autobahn unlock mode to increase top speeds beyond the sort of self-imposed 155 miles an hour top speed up to whatever the maximum is, for quite a lot of money, and certainly a lot more than £649. We have seen companies like BMW trying to introduce unlocking subscriptions for fitted features. I think it was heated seats that we talked about before. So this is just yet another one in the range, and of course, their point of view, I guess, is that they've always, or, car manufacturers always done a sort of a bigger engined, more performant version of the car, and you paid extra for it. So how is this different? You just pay extra and have a higher performant version of the car. And it's just the old fogies out there like me who say, well, I had the capability in the first place, and I've now got to unlock a key for it. That there's a conflict, a tension here between kind of old world and new world. And also that, of course, we must remember that at least in the UK, a great many cars, especially electric cars, of course, are done on a business lease. And so I'm not sure it's going to be terribly easy to swing this extra money past your lease manager on your business fleet, saying it's an essential upgrade for your well-being, but hey, bring it on. Would you pay extras like this, Darian? Quick.
That's a very tricky question. I was going to say it really sticks in the throat. There's something about when it's purely software and they're not actually giving you anything physically different or that required any engineering to enable. It's just something that's been switched off so that they can charge you to switch it back on again. And there is, as I think you sort of imply, there's no real logic to why this is any more offensive than paying £12 a month to use Excel. But it feels very wrong, and I would really struggle to justify. I think what I'd probably do is I'd probably rationalise it to myself as just, well, I'll pay the extra £650 up front, and then I have the unlocked car, and then I don't have to think about it. There's something about the subscription model as well. The combination of the two that really, it just feels like they're kind of screwing you out of something just because they can.
But also, of course, don't forget, I suspect, I mean, it would be interesting to know the terms on this. Maybe you could take out the £16.50 per month for a couple of months and see if it's any value for you and then cancel out of it. That would be kind of interesting. And didn't Tesla have a pay for upgrade to increase the range of your car? It basically converted one battery size into the larger battery size because, of course, all of the cars at that time had the larger battery pack anyway. So, you know, these things have been going on for a while. Nick, is this tickling your fancy?
No, I think Darian's thing about Excel is quite interesting. At the end of the day, you're paying a subscription on Excel, and Microsoft is continuing to develop it. What you're paying for this car is a subscription for a product that you bought that's not technically changing. But my question really would be, if you enable this, say it goes from, is it speed we're talking about? Say 100 miles an hour to 120 miles an hour. If I bought the 100 miles an hour car and then I unlock it to go to 120, do I have to tell my insurer I'm driving a modified car?
Well,
Because it's not the spec that I bought.
ooh, okay, I think we'll just quietly back away from that thought, just to say that my father-in-law has an ID3, and I don't think I'll be recommending him to pay the money for an upgrade. Next nib is with you, Nick, about a super fast OLED monitor.
Yeah, this is the. I'm going to tell everyone that this was basically you and Darian told me I had to talk about this. This ROG Swift OLED monitor announced at Gamescom 2025. It's 26.5-inch display with a 2560 by 1440 resolution. So far, so good. And a standard refresh rate of 540. But if you're willing to drop the resolution down to 720p, that goes up to 720 hertz. And I asked both of you why I should be interested in that. I'm not a gamer, obviously. I'm totally the wrong audience for this. And apart from the fact it's got a lovely rear casing, we don't yet know the price. Neither of you really gave me an answer.
I did. I said it's because I like to laugh at credulous
No.
people.
You see, I think it's it's great that someone has made this. I think as a technology piece, it's really interesting. And if you want bragging rights, it's absolutely the monitor to go for, particularly if you've got the hardware in your computer that would support it. Me, as a bit of a productivity apps person rather than a gamer person, I still need it explaining to me.
You don't want to run LibreOffice at 720 frames per second.
Would I calculate things faster?
No. I mean, our gaming rig here, gaming test computer, has a pretty high-end graphics card and a Samsung monitor that does 240 hertz. And I must confess, it does do a very nice scrolling on gaming. I'm finding it very hard to think it would be better if it went from 240 hertz to whatever this thing can do, 700 and something refresh rate. I think that's just bragging rights, but there we go. And finally, Darian, with you, are we about to see a collapse in the share prices, given that $1 trillion has been wiped off the share prices of AI companies in the last 5 days?
Well, if I knew the answer to that with confidence, then of course I would be potentially a rather wealthy man. But I think there has been, undeniably, we'll all agree, quite a lot of hype around AI. Sam Altman himself described it as a bubble this week. And there has to be a correction at some point. So maybe what we're looking at is a series of gentle steps downwards, of which this is merely the first rather than the crash. But I did want to mention also that there was quite an interesting report came out which coincides with this. I'm not going to say it caused it, but MIT's NANDA initiative, and you have to really look hard to find out what NANDA stands for. It's not on the main website, but I can understand eventually. I found out perhaps I understand why they hide it, because it stands for the Networked Agents Decentralized AI Group. And they've been looking into AI pilot programs in big business, and they've found that only 5% of the ones they looked at in big corporations actually increased revenue. 95% of them had, as they characterize it, little to no measurable impact, which could be worse. I don't think any of them was really identified as creating a massive loss for the company, but it does suggest that AI is not the magic bullet that many bosses might think or hope it is. But there was quite an interesting takeaway, which was they pointed out that more than half of generative AI budgets are being devoted to using AI for sales and marketing, but almost all of the profits are coming from companies that are using AI for back office automation. So fewer adverts and more boring database stuff for your AI agents.
Well, there we go. I think we should now, since we're running short on time, we should roll ourselves into our hot loveliness this week. And it's not really hard. Well, it is hardware and it is software. It's kind of like a platform thing. And I'm going to punt to you.
Hot platform of the
Hot
week. That's
platform.
a new one, I think.
It's yes, it's HP of the week. And there are tools out there that have basically become sort of the go-to, the thing that you go and use. And I spend most of my day inside Excel, for example, or as I'm sure Nick would be there inside LibreOffice. I use LibreOffice too, but most of my days inside Excel. Um, but for video and anything to do with video creative stuff, including generating stuff within the video field, for me, I now have one go-to platform, and that is DaVinci Resolve from Blackmagic Studios. Now, Blackmagic is a lovely company down in Australia, a very straight-talking group of people, and they make great hardware for studio and cameras and interconnects and switches and so forth. But they also have DaVinci Resolve, which started off as a color grading tool, but has grown up big time into full video editing, modeling, color grading. Everything you could possibly want to do in video can be done inside DaVinci Resolve, and it's just come out with version 20. It's cross-platform. It's available on Mac is its kind of primary. It's also on Windows, and I believe it's on Linux, though I actually haven't ever played with it on that. So no, this is a very, very serious piece of software and does everything you could possibly want in that space. So it should immediately get a vote for hot software, and here's why. It's free. 90 something percent of the capabilities of DaVinci Resolve is available in the free version. What do you get for the pay for version? And the pay for version is $299 one-off license, which covers you not just for in-version upgrades, it covers you for major version upgrades. I bought my DaVinci Resolve license probably about 5-6 years ago, and I'm still covered today on the latest version. So it's not like this sort of rolling subscription nonsense that we get with the likes of Adobe and so forth. So it's incredibly powerful, but for the Pro version, you can actually run a full video editing suite, production TV studio and so forth, multi-user simultaneous access across multiple components of the platform on the same projects at the same time. You can see how that is very desirable to people who are doing this in a very professional way. So we love DaVinci Resolve, and it is a 10 out of 10 hot software. But there's more to it than that, because they have been part of the ongoing, very long-term R&D project, which is very high resolution immersive video in the shape of the Apple Vision Pro. And they have just come out with a whole bunch of documentation. I'm just posting a couple of PDF links to the Discord channel, so you can go and grab them from there if you wish. And these are absolutely super in-depth about DaVinci Resolve, and specifically DaVinci Resolve for the Ursa Cine immersive camera, which is their new high-end 180-degree fully immersive high resolution cinema quality camera for doing material. It's primarily designed for Apple Vision Pro, but can also output to any other kind of immersive kind of formats out there like YouTube and so forth. This camera is a total beast. I had a play with it in April in Las Vegas at NAB. It's 8K per side, 90 frames a second, 15 stops depth. It's 3.2 gigabytes a second of user data that this thing churns out. It has 10 gig Ethernet. It has all, more bells and whistles than you could think about. Yes, it's $29,000 US to buy, but in the context of what it is and what it's doing, and the context of pro grade cameras, it's really not expensive. If for one reason, which is the lenses are built in. You're not spending tens of thousands of dollars per lens for a digital cinema camera. And if you want to know how expensive these things can get, go and look at the likes of Cooke or Leica or so forth for expensive lenses, and a lens set for a serious pro cinema camera can cost you a six-figure sum for a set. And so that's built into this because, of course, they are 180-degree lenses, two of them. So why is this interesting? The answer is because it's really coming together as a production grade platform. You can take stuff from this camera into DaVinci Resolve now, fully edit it natively in the unscrewed about version, so the circular version of the native file format. Do everything, effects, you can put 3D stuff into it, you can do color grading, you can do everything you could possibly need to do in a production grade immersive video platform, editing platform. You can preview it and look at it using Apple Vision Pro in real time as your monitoring suite, and then you can decide how you're going to come out the other side onto what platform. But you started with something that is immensely high resolution, very high frame rate, and you can then come back from that to whatever deliverable platform you want to do. So this combination of their hardware and the software is absolutely killer, and joining it all together means that we now actually have a totally workable platform to doing fully end-to-end, very high resolution stuff in this space, and that is a tipping point for this long journey that we're on for moving into immersive video. So yes, $30,000 for the camera. I'm not going to be silly and sit here and say that deserves a hot hardware, although frankly I think it's a bargain. Actually, when you look at what it can do, its capabilities, it's really not expensive at all. Blackmagic have put a whole bunch of demo files out there that you can download from their website of raw camera footage from this, so you can play with the workflow, you can look at it and play around with that without having the camera. But what's really interesting actually is go through their documentation about what's involved in doing immersive video, not just the Apple platform here, but what's involved in doing objects in 3D space, sound, how you do sound, and you have to go beyond the capabilities of things like Dolby Atmos, and what's actually involved here. And if you want a technical nerdgasm, go and read these papers and just think through the size and shape of what's involved here, and it is quite mind-boggling. So at this point I'm going to shut up and say, Darian, how does this tickle your fancy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any questions because it sounds like, I mean, because honestly, it's something so far out of my my day-to-day existence that I can't even really visualize myself using it. And £29,000 is, no, it needs to be no more than 25 or I'm out. But no, you know, I like the idea of, I do like the idea of AR and VR, but you know, I haven't been converted to Vision Pro, and I've got to be honest, I have used DaVinci Resolve a fair bit over, it must be like 8 or 9 years now, and I don't love it. I love the idea of it, but I use it rarely, and it's not very discoverable or intuitive. It is a proper pro thing that you need to do the training to get results out of it, and that's, for me, that's kind of at odds with the idea of a free community edition that anybody can use. But you know, so the whole package is just not very Darian friendly. But since we're already past 2 o'clock, I may as well cut to the chase and admit. Oh, can someone on Discord do a poll, please? Someone very helpfully did last week, and it saved us all a lot of bother. I will say that I have to admit, yes, the way it all works together. I'm a big fan of things that fit together and interoperate, and so although it's not for me, that alone I think is enough to definitely push it over the line. So hot.
Nick?
Hot.
Well, that was nice and quick. I mean, for myself, this is a complete sort of, I hate to use the term visionary, but you know where I'm coming from. Totally step change forward in terms of video and content creation and so forth. And I think it's hotter than hot. Yeah, the camera is undoubtedly a lot of money. But to have this kind of grade of software available out there, you're absolutely right, Darian. This is a big beast of a piece of software. This is not something you dip into and out of every eight weeks to put together a cat video. But you know, this is a very serious tool, and very serious software platform. And I'm delighted to see that everything that they promised that they would do, they have now actually delivered on. So if it's a hot from me, so there's 3 hots in here. We haven't managed to get a poll going, I think. But
I'm sorry, I did that classic thing. You're not supposed to say, "Can somebody do this?"
Yes,
You're
I know.
supposed to name somebody.
So I'm
and
just
I
going.
didn't.
I'm just going to read through the comments here, and it's we've got old school hot, purposes of professional videography hot. David says hot. Darth Linux says they support Linux too. Hot, hot, hot. Please check that, please, because I remember seeing it, but I'm not sure it's there. Retne says hot. William Kirk says hot. Jeff Campbell says cold, so bar humbug to him. Gavin Hall says hottity hot hot. I'm not sure quite hottity hot is. Oh, we've got a poll running now, but I don't care. It seems to be hot across the board, and I will take that and wear it with pride. So on that point, I think thank you everybody on Discord for coming along live today. And as I said, please do go and read some of these papers if you're really interested in some of this stuff, because it was really quite mind blown as to what they've done in this space. I'd like to say thanks to Darian and to Nick for their good humour and wit today, and thanks to the listeners, and thanks to you. And we will be back next week with more rambling nonsense from us. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Yep. I guess I shall take that away and edit it.
Tom, actually, is there anything else we need to cover off? No?
I hope
No?
not. We've said
Okay.
goodbye, so. All right. Cheers then.
Bye.
Bye.